Welcome to the Fire from Two Windows podcast, where we take a deep dive into different aspects of the fire service. My name is Matt Humnicky, and I'm joined with my co-host, Lou Caminelli. We want to express that these are our own opinions built by experiences and education while honing our craft. These are not the opinions nor directions from our various employers. We are here on our own to spur conversation and help level the playing field for all. Good morning, Lou.
Hey, Matt, how are you?
I'm well. Got off of work early this morning. Popped onto this. We got an exciting episode for us. Did not get a chance to get in the gym before any of this, so that's kind of bumming me out. But this takes precedence. I think I got something lined up for this afternoon.
It's a run day for me. I wanted to get in the gym, but it's going to be running with the dog today.
So you guys are already making me look bad. No gym, no run.
For those of you who's tuning in today, we have a special guest today coming out of Detroit. We have Dave Nowacki, Sergeant of Engine 54 from Detroit Fire. He also runs the Fourth Man Fire Training Series, which can be found on Instagram. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Great having you on. Do you have any other connection with your platform? Do you expand that any further than Instagram?
Well, I started on Instagram really just as a shot in the dark. I was just scrolling, doom scrolling. Everyone does it. And my wife's like, you should get on Instagram. And so I put one out there, and I started seeing videos of guys doing things on the fire ground. And I was like, wow, this is amazing stuff. Repost it. Didn't think anything of it. And kind of fast forward a couple of years, 20,000 followers later, it's kind of like, all right, I guess that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Was that an exciting moment or uh-oh?
Well, no, it was exciting. There's little uh-ohs in everything you do, right? You get it more out there. You're more of a target. There's a lot of disagreement in the fire service, just like anywhere else, and a lot of type A personalities. So no, it's been good. I love talking to people about the fire service. Seeing what they're like, what their experiences were. They're vastly different sometimes than mine. But there's common thread through everything. And that's what I love about the brotherhood. Really, I could use brotherhood and fire service interchangeably, but really brotherhood's what it's about.
100%.
Yeah, 100%.
So, said you're from Detroit Fire for over 20 years?
Yeah, I think it's 21 now.
Good for you, man. Born and raised in Detroit, or did you find yourself go out there?
I got pulled in. I got sucked in like a tractor beam. I was born on the other side of the state in a little town called South Haven. I didn't know anything about the fire service except for guys sat around on the front bench watching the girls go by that were heading to the beach. Occasionally cat in a tree rescue or something like that. Paid no attention to them. I don't want to do that. Never had a thought about the fire service. When I was 12, I come from a broken home, the American dream, right? You see dad every other weekend. And my mom got remarried to a guy who was a pilot up in Alaska. Crazy. So we moved up to Alaska when I was 12. That's kind of where I started my journey in the whole rescue, genre, I guess. When I was 13, my stepdad, Alaska's big, right? A lot of space. And the state troopers up there run most of the search and rescue. Missing hikers, down aircraft, everything in between. And so a lot of their stuff is volunteer. The state troopers deputize pilots, fishermen, guys with boats, and they say, hey, we need to go do this massive square mile search. And my stepdad was a part of that. So, hanging out with my stepdad, I kind of was early on seeing these missions, these rescue missions. And by the time I was 14, I was on them and caught the bug. So just kept going with that. And pretty soon I was on what they'd call mountain rescue teams, hasty teams, sent up in the mountains for days on end. And then, that was it. I knew what I wanted to do. Fast forward to 19 years old. life changed dramatically. I got saved, came to know Christ, and felt like I wanted to help young people that were a little less privileged than I was. I moved to Detroit on a whim, bought a runway ticket, and I still have family in Michigan and never looked back. I went and interned with a after school program that helped inner city kids on the east side of Detroit and on the west side. Funny enough, and I'm now fighting fires in that same area. That I never really lost that itch, you know. So eventually, when a friend of mine said, "Hey, the fire department's hiring," I say, "Well, you know, by that time I had been in the neighborhoods enough to know what these firemen did, and you know, as you can imagine, watching these guys run into burning buildings in a complete silent symphony. These guys just get off rigs, do their job, and go home. I was like, wow, that's incredible." The clincher was nothing to do with fire service at all. He said, "Hey, you can work 9 days a month and have all your time off." I was like, sign me up. Where do I sign up? I don't even care how much it pays. It's 9 days a month. This is crazy. So I went and applied. There was 14,000 applications that were handed out that weekend for 35 spots. And yeah, crazy back then. You know, 20 years ago, everyone wanted to be a fireman. You couldn't find a fire job. You were on waiting lists for 10 years in most of these urban centers. God's grace, luck, whatever you want to call it, I got a call. And here I am 20 years later.
So was it a testing process, like a civil service exam back then?
Yeah. Like a lot of the urban centers, it was civil service, right? You just need to be breathing and have a GED, right? And then you had to pass civil service tests, which have nothing to do with fire. Just
No.
If you're an idiot that can read, you know, and if you can run faster an obstacle course. I mean, that's as simple as it was back then. You didn't need any certs. I had my EMT already because I felt like that was the direction I wanted to go, rescue work. But yeah, that was it. Civil service job, and 35 of us looking around going, how did I get this?
Yeah, it's crazy. Even on a smaller scale in our area, I remember when I first started taking the fire exams, it was you would have a couple thousand people sitting down for an exam for 5-6 positions, because back then the county pay department, besides the city of Rochester, the county pay departments were only hiring maybe 1 or 2 a year if you were lucky. And now you have a couple hundred people for, 24 positions being put on a year.
It has changed dramatically. I hope to see it come back. That's part of the reason why we do what we do, I think, is trying to kind of inspire young people to get back into this frontline stuff in our society, you know, police, fire, teaching, you know, all the things that are the fabric of our society. Just doesn't seem like anyone else to do it anymore. You know, I look now and these kids are coming out. They're like taking anyone they can. Anyone that applies has a shot. Whereas, you know, back then it was, oh, you'll be on a waiting list for 10 years. You may not even get it.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of guys like that. They're my age and they just got on, you know, 5 years after me. Same list. You know, it's kind of crazy. And I think that speaks to the fire service itself. I hope admin pays attention to the fact that 14,000 people wanted to apply to make 26,000 a year, and now they can't get 300 to apply, making 75. You know, that alone should be a wake up call to the administration, saying, "Hey, there's something that's changed that maybe we need to fix."
Well, it's interesting. They just had a report on the other news the other day. I had it in the background at the firehouse that was it Gen Z. This is the first time since however many decades that this generation is seeking more trades jobs than actually going to college now. Yeah. So maybe that's a shift of we're going to start seeing more applicants taking fire and police exams.
Yeah, the Mike Rowe effect, right?
Yeah,
Their
exactly.
jobs. Yeah, that guy's done more for skilled trades. Jeez, I would love to
Yeah.
have him on a podcast one day.
Yeah, he is a good dude. He seems like his heart's in the right place for everything.
Yeah, so Mike Grill, if you're listening, we want you on our
we'll
podcast.
we'll tag him in on the when we post it up.
I love it.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, it's kind of funny seeing all the change of society as a whole right now. I know we got a lot going on politically, but as far like growing up for us, there was a lot of trades. Our parents were in trade work, and then we're pushing for us as we were coming up to go to college, and then everybody started going to college. And now that it's very financial heavy world where everything is about moving money rather than producing an actual product. And that's kind of what we're seeing. I think politically, not that this is a political podcast and I really don't want to go down that track, but
Why not?
well, it's
No,
because it can,
listen.
if you don't zoom out to that 30,000 foot view of the economy, and really take it for what it's worth, like as a whole, the economy is really just a blender with the lid off. Money has to come in, but right now, for the last 20 years, we've been doing nothing but running the blender dry with the lid off. So money's just flying out the top. And that's when we purchase products from overseas or elsewhere. And really, we haven't done anything to bring money and put it back in the blender and put the lid on it. So what we did is we started by putting the lid on it. Now we got to start putting money in and getting people to buy. And where that comes for us, why that's important is that we don't produce anything. It doesn't matter how many hours we put in at the firehouse. We actually don't produce any more widgets. I can't go out and tell the district or the city, hey, if I do 10 more hours, we can make, $100,000 more this week. It doesn't work that way. We are there. Our job is to support society as it moves along. So we kind of require society and the economy to do better so that we can help keep it running functionally from the background. And that's really, that's what our job is in a nutshell.
It's interesting because our jobs exist based on the economy. Think about it. When the economy collapses, we get real busy. You see the Bronx, the burned in the 70s and 80s, that was all economy driven.
Right.
They were busy because the economy was bad. And when things go bad, we get more work. Whether it's on the EMS side or fire side, or the ever expanding mission drift, as I call it, for the fire service. I think that's something for us to do, to plug a hole somewhere in society.
Yeah. And that's the background. The flip side is that, when the economy's shit and people can't afford to take care of stuff and services aren't there, we still get called out to these things, right? That service isn't for free. Somehow we have to support it just to keep the wheels literally on the engine or on the rig. But when the economy is doing really, really well, now we got more people coming into town working, your population density is now increased. More people means a probability of an increased set of problems as well. And we have to mitigate those. So on both ends of the spectrum, we have a job. There really isn't a spot, or rather no need for us anywhere. But the problem is, how do you fund it? And you want to be prepared to be able to do both ends.
Yep.
It's you mentioned the academy, and I remember watching an interview with the late Terry Hatton of Rescue One, and the first thing he used to read when he got to work was the financial section of the New York Times. And they asked him, why do you read the financial section? He goes, well, depending on how the stocks were doing and everything else, it had a correlation to how busy they were going to be.
It's true.
Isn't
It'll
that
always
wild?
be true.
Yep. So with you being in Alaska, and it seems like you had a lot of time being taken up with the rescue work you were doing, did you have time for sports or anything like that?
So I played baseball
Nice.
as a young kid, and all the kids in my neighborhood played baseball because it was the cheapest sport, and it was free childcare for my mom, and it was something to keep me out of her hair during the summer. Like any other broke family, we went and did the free stuff. So I spent a lot of time at the beach because South Haven's a beach town. Played baseball. But the move to Alaska kind of changed things. I didn't have a lot of confidence as a kid. I didn't grow up with my dad around too much, which, we could do a whole section on growing up with dads. But so I really didn't, I was a new kid, didn't really want to try out, didn't have a lot of confidence. So I kind of let sports go. Organized sports. I still played, the sandlot kind of stuff,
Yeah.
pick basketball, things like that. But I always was drawn to athletic stuff, physical. I did a lot of rock climbing and scuba diving in Alaska because, that's what people do up there. Yeah, so physicality was always a part of my life.
So I was gonna say, if you played baseball in Alaska, you probably played till like 10, 11 o'clock at night, and it's still daylight
Right.
in the summertime.
Yeah. So interesting up there. They long time ago, ESPN did a whole thing on Alaska sports. And they used Juneau, which is where I was at, the capital city. It's only about 25,000 people. But up there's a lot of, you play on fields that are full of rock and they're mud. It rains all the time up there.
I think I remember seeing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So part of what we did before the guys played, we'd all do a line and go through the whole field on the football field and pick up all the rocks that had come up. Because
That
the rocks
instills some discipline.
from the glaciers that went through, thousands of years ago. And so there's a whole different mentality up there. It's raining, no big deal. Let's play through. It's pouring, okay, let's go. Everything up there is just a little different. So, yeah, it was a different experience. But you know what? It shaped who I am today. I wouldn't change it for anything. It was an incredible experience.
Life experience has to shape. Just living up there and then coming back here kind of puts everything into perspective.
That's it. It's perspective, right? My kids, just yesterday, it's been pouring in Michigan for like 3 days straight. And my kids are like, I don't want to go outside because we homeschool our kids. So my wife is full-time teacher and I help out. But they're like, I don't want to go outside. I'm like, put a raincoat on and go outside. Because if, up in Alaska, if you didn't go outside in the rain, guess what? You just never went outside.
Yeah, we had baseball practice last night for the kids, and it was raining. And I was like, looked at the kids. I was like, look, we're gonna practice in the rain until I start getting dirty looks from the parents to say wrap it up because it's it's the Northeast. It's gonna rain.
And what you're teaching them is, man, I think about the fire service and this principle right here. It's like, I don't really want to train in 60 degree clear sky weather. Like I went out with my guys and we went up on a roof on a vacant. We found a vacant out in the Brightmoor neighborhood. We get vacants. We have something you probably don't have as much of in your area. We'll find a vacant that's getting close to being demolished and we'll use it as training. So it's pouring rain. The guys are kind of like, we went out in that. I'm like, well, what would you do if we had a fire in that? What are you going to be like? It's too hot. It's too wet.
Fair weather fireman.
It's a different generation, and that's cool. That's my job, is to figure that out. And they grew up with the doom scrolling and the games right here, and so there's a little less of that resiliency at first with these young kids. Some of them have it, So I'm not saying everyone, but there's not a lot of grit in the younger generation as a whole.
Yeah.
And so that's something you have to overcome and teach. Like, hey, listen, we got a job to do and you're going to push to your limit and you're going to feel exhausted. And this is not the job for someone who wants to sit in front of a desk.
Yeah, it's interesting because my son is starting to get into video games a little bit more. And I keep reminding myself, it's like, well, you grew up playing video games. Not to the extent because the access wasn't there for when we were younger. Like back when we were younger, you had it plug in the Nintendo system. You had maybe you only the blowing the cartridge, crate the cartridge. Yeah, and luckily my parents, we had the TV I played on was like the hand-me-down TV from my grandparents. So we luckily had 2 TVs, but there was a time when we only had 1 TV, so I only got to play video games when nobody was around watching TV. And if mom and dad wanted to put the news on, you know what? I wasn't playing. I wasn't playing video games.
SWAT
Now,
news going up.
oh yeah. That was also the resident channel changer too. When the cable box had the slide on it.
Go hit the channel. Yep.
Yeah.
So Walter Cronkite was the main news producer when I was a little kid. You know, there was just like 2 channels, and yeah, you were forced to watch whatever they were watching.
Yep.
Dave, what years were you? What ages were you in Alaska?
So I was there for about 8 years, from 1997. Oh, let me backtrack. See, getting old, you forget things now. So from 6th grade to 1 year out of high school. So almost 8 years, 7 years-ish. So junior high and high school I did up in Alaska, and then stayed another year before I was like, I got to get out of this small town mentality. It wasn't Alaska that I wanted to get away from. It was the small town black hole. You know, like if I stay here, I'm going to stay here forever. I may work in I don't know, some small business for the rest of my life. And I've always had this adventurous spirit. Like, I want to go. I got that itch. I want to do something. And Detroit was calling me for whatever reason. I think the good Lord just put it on my heart, and I couldn't shake it. So I was like, I'll make enough money to buy a one-way ticket. See you, Mom. I'll be back in a year. I never came back.
Does she still live up there?
Oh, she moved back. You know, grandkids are like a tractor beam. They're, eventually everyone goes where the grandkids are. And my sisters and my brother both still live in Michigan. So it was kind of like we all came back to the state.
Gotcha. So when you were up there, so you said this is like junior high, just the beginning of high school. You were doing the mountain rescue?
Yeah, all through
program?
high school, I carried a state-issued state police pager.
Nice.
Yeah. And the school had an understanding if my pager went off and there was a rescue, I'd leave. So I had my 3-day pack, all my climbing gear, all my stuff ready to go in the back of my pickup, and I would just bolt. I felt like a rock star, like, see you guys, have fun in English. So
how often were you called out?
I mean, pretty regularly, maybe once a week.
Damn.
Because they're big missions. They don't require, high school students on these short little things. But if it was a big thing, they would start bringing guys out. And of course, I had a couple connections, so I got called out even when I probably didn't need to. It was kind of like, hey, can I go? I want to get out of school. So, yeah, it was fun. I mean, it shaped who I am today. It's pretty morbid to think about, as a high school student seeing all that death and despair. But here I am still dealing with death and despair.
All right.
Do you maintain any relationships with the people from up there?
I do. The state trooper that kind of mentored me, became like a father figure. He went on to teach survival up there for the state police, and then he went off to retire. I still keep in touch with him. I tell him how all the time, what he's done for me in my life, and I like to think that God puts people in your place in your life just to kind of bring you where you're supposed to be, either ignore it or not. But yeah, he really made a big difference in my life.
Did you have any other influences? Anybody else that like a mentorship?
Yeah, my best friend's dad was a detective on the police force there. I say it funny that I was surrounded by 2 cops, and I was the most in trouble kid you'll ever meet. I was 10 years old. I was getting close to being arrested when I lived in South Haven. So I was on that path, that I was searching for any adrenaline rush I could get. And those 2 kept me from making the really bad decisions that would have left me in a different world. Because I knew those guys had their ear to the scanner, and they knew enough. I had a few times where like, hey, listen, heard some stuff. Maybe you need to find new friends. It was enough for me to go, okay, there's some people looking out and I need to make better decisions. So
Yeah,
I say the
Detroit it
rescue.
is.
What's that?
Detroit it is.
Yeah, right. So then I went to the worst. Right. So Detroit called my name again later on in life. But yeah, they those mentors really shaped me and kept me kind of on the straight and narrow. I was always one of those guys. The rules were meant to for someone else. I was to be the one breaking them. But yeah,
With the rescues that took place in Alaska, any like seriously like highly technical rescues, or were they just going out and doing searches and stuff?
so I worked on a hasty team, which was like a lot of young bucks with a lot of energy that could stay out for 2 or 3 days with minimal, supplies. Um, and a lot of it was grid search or contour searching from the top of a mountain. You get dropped off in a helicopter at the top and work your way down. Some of it was rope rescue. I did some rope rescue with the Juneau Mountain Rescue for a bit. But yeah, I wouldn't say too highly technical. It's all relative, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
we had these here, and if you've never done it, you go, "Oh, that looks super technical." To me, I grew up in it. I didn't really know any different. I was just
Right.
excited to ride helicopters.
It sounds like a cool gig for a high school student.
Yeah,
You
I
know?
didn't care that I didn't get paid anything. It didn't
Yeah.
matter to me.
Yeah, your payment was getting out of class.
But yeah, 100%.
Well, that leads right into it. What were the grades like? How was schooling?
Well, I was an honor student that got a lot of C's and D's.
Interesting.
School came real easy to me, probably too easy, and I really didn't have a lot of people pushing me in school. My mom was so busy just trying to make the ends meet that I was kind of on my own as far as my day-to-day operations, and without someone kind of holding your feet to the fire, you kind of do what kids do. I skipped a lot of class. When I had to, I'd hurry up and do my work, so I just barely pass. It didn't mean a lot to me back then. I hope my son never sees this.
So then after all of this, then you came back down to Michigan
I did.
and finished off high school?
No, I finished high school up there. I
Oh, okay.
graduated. Got in trouble my last day of my senior year and had to do community service. Yeah, and then I went to work for Pepsi Corporation for a year. Just kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and it just wasn't. It wasn't the thing I wanted to do. So the opportunity came, big adventure down to Detroit. I just
Man,
took
it just seems like a wild, like in my head, it seems like a wild transition, like adventure and excitement up in Alaska, and then you come back down to, Michigan right to Detroit, or were you out in the suburbs?
Straight to Detroit.
Okay, and how was that transition period?
For me, it was nothing. Like I'm pretty resilient. Like I don't care if I live in a cardboard box. My wife would have something to say about that, but I was always that guy that packed with just a toothbrush, let's go kind of deal. So to me, it was excitement. It didn't matter what kind of excitement it was exciting. And it was challenging, working, barely still a kid myself, working with kids that were struggling with things I'd never dealt with in my life. That was exciting. I was making a difference, right? I always use the analogy: a flashlight really doesn't light up a room that's already lit, right? Flashlight works the best in darkness. And so I was making a difference because it was such a dark place I was working in with some of these kids. And that was exciting. That was rewarding to me. It wasn't exactly down the road what I wanted to do my whole life, but it led me to what I'm doing now.
It's a noble thing at that age to take on. Two, in a city like Detroit, I can see the excitement in Detroit with that. So when you get the call from the fire department, say you've been hired, what's going through your mind at that point?
Absolute chaos. So Detroit works like every big city. Communication's terrible. Scheduling's off. You don't know what's going on. And then one day you get a letter saying, hey, show up for this physical, which, by the way, was a week before I even got the letter. So this physical was scheduled, let's say, February 1st, and I get the letter February 28th. I'm like, oh no, my dream is dissolving. So I'm freaking out because I'm thinking, they must abide by the rules. Now, you learn that real quick in big cities. Rules are more of a guideline. And she's like, no, just come down tomorrow. I'm like, oh, that's it? Yeah, oh, yeah, you're fine. So I went down and took a physical, and right away, within a couple months, I was in the academy, bewildered, in a brand new place, with my head shaved. And Detroit is a paramilitary, Detroit Fire Department's a paramilitary organization. So it's like basic training. You show up, you get hired. So you're getting paid $23,000 a year. You qualified for food stamps if you had a family back then. 35 of us just looking at each other going, what are we doing? Yeah. And there was a good mix.
You had 35 in your academy?
35.
Okay.
Yeah, and there was a mix. There was legacy guys with their dads and grandpas that were on the job, just like every urban area does. Back then, you kind of had a little special treatment. You could get on those lists if you knew somebody, But yeah, most of us were just guys who were like, I just want to be a fireman.
Yeah, I remember when I was going through the process between the county fire departments and the city fire department. It's like there was like a line in the early 2000s where the city of Rochester was like, yeah, we're not giving any preferential treatment to legacy guys anymore. And one of our good friends, his older brother got the preferential treatment. And then when he was going through the process, they're like, yeah, it doesn't matter what your last name is, who you know, whatever.
Administrations change, and then the whole process kind of changes too. Process is the same, but and even in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was still a lot of like prejudice and division in race and all those things that play a part in these big mixing bowls of urban areas. And I was as much a part of that as, not part of it, but I was entering into that realm, and there was a lot of question. It was the first year that they had hired, one of the first years they'd hired since they got rid of residency. Back then they had residency rules, and you had to live in the city in order to get hired on the city. The city was changing a lot as far as color and a lot of upheaval. I'm sure most people know this, a little bit of the history of Detroit. And we were in that mix, and we saw a lot of that, and that was a big learning experience for me too.
So how was the academy experience for you?
It was good. I was a middle of the pack kind of guy.
The Mr. Gray.
I wasn't the standout. I was a gray man.
Yeah.
I was not at the back of the pack, not at the front, and I liked it like that. Maybe I say I liked it like that because I was never going to be at the front of the pack. But yeah, it was a lot of running, a lot of push-ups, a lot of running, flights of stairs, a little bit of firefighting, 1 and 2 mixed in there. But
how long was the academy?
Ours was 21 weeks.
Does that include like a EMT portion or something? Or
back then we didn't do EMS. Was a separate division back then. So we learned how to fight fire, and if there was a person inside, I look at it back now, it's a little shocking even in my own surmise, but you more times than not, you'd see someone pull a victim out and just lay him on the front lawn, and the EMS can deal with them. We went back to fighting fire. It was just so separate back then that no EMT required, no fire 1 and 2 required. They just wanted to get you and shape you.
Was this like a Monday through Friday academy?
Yep, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, 8 to 5, something like that.
Okay, so you got to go home at the end of the night, or was there a barracks?
No, we went home at night, and then just fastly fell asleep on the couch. Ironed my stuff in the morning, got up at 5 in the morning, got my stuff ready, and went back to work.
Yeah, take me back to a time when there was an EMS.
Yeah, it's that. I don't know how many podcasts you want to do, but that's a whole nother podcast we could talk about. EMS is a big portion of the fire service now. When I started, firemen do what firemen do. That's what we did. You know, it was just fighting fires. When I came on, I think the city was still running 26 to 32 structure fires a night, which sounds wild to think about, but that's what it was.
Yeah.
And so you were guaranteed to hit the ground running when you got assigned to your first place.
I mean, yeah. I mean, a city that's running structure fires that frequent, how do you even justify running EMS? Yeah. Now you're just taking companies out of service,
right?
For a blood pressure or whatever.
Let's write that one down for another podcast.
Yeah.
We're gonna open up some weird doors here. I call it mission drift. I know that's been used before by some big names in the fire service, but it's true. We have become the catch-all for so many things, and man, it'd be nice just to fight fires again.
Yeah,
that's not where we're at.
Our department currently is doing like I don't know, what would you call it, Matt? A social media thing where they're interviewing the guys.
Oh yeah, they hired a marketing intern to do to kind of market the department, but I think the concept was initially to let this intern work on their final project for college to help attract people to the fire service, but it's kind of more of showcasing what we do at the same time.
So one of the things I told her, she's like, what do you think about the fire service? I was like, at this point in time, we're the cheapest insurance policy there is. People call us when they don't know how to handle any problem that they have, and even the police will call us, the ambulance will call us.
Yep.
I mean, we went the other day. It was their home health aide didn't show up, and she was stuck in her wheelchair for half the day, and all she wanted was a glass of water.
Yep.
And who responded? It was us, you know.
Of course, because you're dispatched, you go and handle it and get back into, we're workers. And most of us aren't in the upper levels to change how things are happening. So you kind of just deal with whatever you got. 10 years ago, Detroit went through a bankruptcy, the largest municipal bankruptcy, the first of its kind, really. And during that time, the city saw an opportunity and shredded our contracts and said, you're going to be doing this now. Like it, take it or leave it. And we started taking on some EMS responsibilities back then. And there was a tough learning curve for a lot of the old heads because you're used to running 4 or 5 structure fires a night, some car accidents, maybe some shootings if you were involved somehow, or but it changed dramatically in 2014 where we started going on toe pain and heart attacks and overdoses and domestic mental health issues. Before it was like pretty simple. You see fire, you go inside, you put it out, you pack up, go home, high five each other, talk about all the chaos. And it was simple, super simple. And now you're in people's homes, you're experiencing their dysfunction or lack of dysfunction, whatever. You're in their lives. And that's way different than when I started.
Yeah. And it's man, this is a whole nother topic, but it can get kind of wild on how that lives and breathes, the fire service, the EMS, and even the police. And And we've gotten so far away from our own individual roles, right? We're all public servants first before the rest of the title. You're a public servant, firefighter, you're a public servant, police officer, so on and so forth. It's there to serve the public in any needs necessary.
Right.
However, a lot of our governing bodies kind of, when they start chipping away at that budget and everything, and they limit us down, you go from 3 services to 2 services to 1 service, and everything compacts into one. Over time, it becomes, for one, the last one to survive, you kind of need to expand your field a little bit, you're with a broad stroke, and be like, oh, hey, we also do the cat in the tree. We also do the toe pain. We also do so don't get rid of us. But, but at the same time, okay, when you start to expand back open, there's never a guideline or a rule or an understanding that we need to write those lines in the sand that say, hey, this is the fire department's responsibility. This is EMS's responsibility. This is police. This is the dog catcher or animal control, whatever it is. Right. And without those lines being drawn, because people are afraid to at a government level, now we have a lot of overlap and duplication of services. So now we've accidentally waxed and waned in the other direction, where we have duplication of services, and then people start asking questions, and it's man,
we are at the will of what the talking heads and the bean counters want.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that aligns with us, and oftentimes it does not. But I got 20 years on. I got 12 more to go in this place. We have to leave when we're 60. They kind of kick us out, saying you're too old, you break a hip, and then you'll be. And by the time you're 60, you're so beat up.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine doing this job at 65 or 70. The lack of sleep, the surgeries, the back pain, all the things. And now, really, the mental health, you're dealing with so much craziness domestically. I think it wears on you. We are now, in the last couple of years, we're now one department, EMS and fire are one. Our young guys now come on. They don't go straight to firefighting. They are hired through the EMS portion first. They ride ambulances, and then they do what we call trial service, which is like probies. You get assigned to an engine. And then after you get your badge, when you're badged in right after a year, you go straight to a split shift where you do one half on the ambulance, the other half on a fire apparatus. And I can't imagine what these kids go through, where the only thing I knew is to go in that front door and put fire out. Day in and day out. I learned my craft very quickly. I think I had probably 90 fires under my belt by the time I got my badge. And they were not small fire. They were big. You were doing work. And now a kid could go 2 years and stretch a couple times, maybe not. And then that other half, they're doing something else. It's like a plumber that half his day does electrical work. Can you imagine how hard it would be to be a good plumber?
Right.
Listen, that may ruffle some feathers, but you don't find a Fortune 500 plumbing business that goes, hey, you guys are kind of slow today. We need some 220 lines run. The CEO will go, what? No, we're not doing that, right? Because the bottom line is I need good plumbers. And then an electrical company can come and do the good electrical work. I look at it like that with the fire service. It's like, it's really hard to be good at both. And what the cities care about mostly, and you go back to the question of fire doesn't make any money. EMS could be said that they make some money through billing, and it looks better for votes. It looks better for the people in charge when you're solving emergencies on the EMS side for the citizens. So that's really what they kind of tend to look at, like how many butts and seats on EMS rigs can I put out? Fire is more of a, yeah, okay, you can be fireman too. But it doesn't bode well for someone who's young to really get in there and become a good fireman. And I use fireman. I don't like to use the word firefighter because I think when that term started to come about, it really was a dilution of the fire service. Back then it was fireman. And look, I don't care if you're black, white, fat, gender, fluid, it doesn't matter. If you're a fireman, you're a fireman. It doesn't know gender or bounds. So I always kind of tip my hat to the old school. You're a good fireman. And that is lost in the fire service today. Unfortunately, I think that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one. That getting back to calling people firemen and not firefighters, I think the term firefighter is kind of a dilution of what we do.
Yeah.
Or
and
just
I have
traditionally.
some women on my job that are absolutely fantastic firemen. And they would take that as a badge of honor if I called them, you're a good fireman. They'd be like, okay. They would make their day because they understand.
Yeah, I think I use it semi-interchangeably, but the way it was described to me at the very beginning by one of the chiefs of the city was a firefighter's your role. And when you get the opportunity to progress through your career or your craft, when you actually start to master that, that's when you like it's given to you. You earn the title of fireman.
Yeah.
Type of thing. But it was never it had nothing to do with gender or anything else.
Right.
It was like a badge of honor, if you will.
Yep.
So in those first 90 fires, what was your first fire like?
You know, my personality is it's Groundhog Day every day for me. Yeah. You asked me what I wore yesterday, I'd probably guess maybe blue because I'm working, but I don't. You know, some guys are. I remember my first fire. I was pushing through that back bedroom. I don't remember. It was a blur. I remember a couple fires here or there were close calls or, rescues or things like that. But I couldn't tell you my first fire. It was just hit the ground running, and they just kind of blurred through that first year.
What were you assigned to right out of the academy?
So I was assigned to Engine 41 on the east side, busy firehouse. I don't think I got a fire my first day, which was wild. It was kind of like, oh, you're the white smoke, and that didn't last very long. And then we just started going. East side of Detroit is pretty burned out now. The city of Detroit was at one point like 2 million people. It's known as the city of houses, right? That's why you get a lot of Southern influence in Detroit because people from all over the United States could find a good paying job in the city because of the automotive industry. So people came up from the South, black, white. It didn't matter. There was a sense of equality up here, equal pay at least. And so a lot of people came to Detroit. Everything that's made now, it seems like it started in Detroit. The first paved highways, the first traffic lights, all the beer companies, like all the things started in Detroit. And then the markets crashed and the city started shrinking, and we're at like 700,000 now. So you go from 2 million and houses to house 2 million, not apartment complexes, but primarily single family residences. And then you have all those structures with only 700,000 people. Well, if we did the quick math, that's a lot of vacant structures in the city. And Detroit's motto is from the ashes we will rise. And they've been true to that ever since the beginning. Because Detroit has had this unnatural relationship with fire. And so we were just fighting vacants. I mean, my instructor, lieutenant at the time, he was probably another mentor of mine. He'd always say, by the end of your trial service, you're going to have a degree in vacant dwellings. And that was true. I mean, 95% of what I fought my first year was all vacants. And that's what I learned. I mean, whether it was a story and a half bungalow to a 4-family flat, it didn't really matter. We were going into it. It didn't matter the amount of fire or the amount of smoke. Back then, it was just the whole sense of pride was we're interior, we're aggressive, we go in and get it done. And we're a seniority system. I'll preface this. So all of our promotions come through strict seniority. It's changed a little bit, but for the most part, to get promoted, you just got to keep breathing and living. And eventually you'll make sergeant, then lieutenant, then captain, and then chief, battalion chief, and then even up to senior chief. So it was all based on time. So back then, I didn't really need to know who was who. If they were wearing a red helmet, they had 20 years plus fighting these kind of fires. So there was a safety net there, whereas there was a bunch of dudes that I knew had a ton of time on. And so if they were there doing it, yeah, it was a little uncomfortable at first, right? You like, I'm going into that. But you look around and they're all going in too, so I guess it's cool. And then you just, that's how you learned. With a knee in your back, that's how you kind of learned.
There's still something noble about that, using the seniority as a promotion rather than just a testing period.
Yeah.
Because around here, if you have 3 years on a job, you can test and score high enough, and you are now you can be promoted.
So, and that's to me, it's absolutely insane. But that's my perspective, right? So, I mean, obviously, some people may have different opinions on it. I think education is an extremely important thing. There is things that change in the fire service that we need to be aware of. There's leadership and there's a communication and all these things, but the root of what we do is fighting fire. And to put so many certs and credentials on a boss that might have 3 or 4 years on, and now they're in charge, that's fine on a medical run. That's fine on, let's say, 90% of the stuff. And then you get something that 3 years has no business being in charge of. And not because the person's not a good person or not smart, but like, that's put my 14-year-old in Civil War, give him an M16 and saying, go to war. I mean,
yeah, they just haven't seen it.
They haven't seen it. And then when you have it, it's not the time to learn.
Right.
It's not. And that's why I think that, Detroit did an enormous amount of fire in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. And we've tapered off quite a bit. We still run about 7 structure fires a night, but that's a lot slower than 26. But with that being said, I mean, when you're out there doing that, it really is important to have the experience there, because like you said, 95% of our stuff was vacant. But when you got the one with people trapped on the second floor or back bedroom, and there's a ton of fire between us and them, and that vacant structure doesn't look so hot, or that structure doesn't look great, and the conditions are rapidly changing, that 5-year guy is just not going to make that same decision. And that could lead to a lot of injuries or worse. And really, our line of duty deaths do not reflect the amount of fires we went to. Whereas you go to other places, and if you put them on the same level, statistically, there'd be a lot more injuries and a lot more death. But I think it was because of seniority that kept us safe. It was repetition, And
That's a great point.
And I like what we've changed here in the city is there is testing now on the upper levels, and there is requirements to get promoted now. But it's as long as you have that requirement met, seniority still is the first thing. Like, I had to have my fire officer 1 and 2. As long as I had it, I'm next up, because I was next up. When you get up into the chiefs, you have to test for it, but as long as you fail, you're next up. We have appointed positions above that now we didn't used to have, but that's the way the world is changing.
Actually, it's actually a great way of doing it, because I mean, there are senior guys out there that have no business being a boss, and I'm guessing they could turn down the promotion if they want, right?
Not then.
Oh, really?
You had to make it. And so, yeah, seniority system has its kinks too, right? I mean, you could be a complete zero, and you just came for a good paying city job, let's say, and you just kept breathing, and eventually you were in charge. But everyone kind of knew those guys. Like, oh, Yeah, that's that guy. We're not putting a lot of confidence in that guy. But usually that guy disqualified himself. He was what we call a shepherd. And he had a nice pipe pole standing right by it. Kind of looked like he was tending to his sheep, but doing nothing. Those guys know how to hide. They've hidden their whole career. And they were kind of out of the way. We have 22 guys on a box alarm. And I'd say even now, you get 12 workers, 15 workers. And there's guys that, do their thing.
Yep.
But seniority is a beautiful thing. It's fair. It doesn't go, oh, well, I like that guy, so he's now our next lieutenant. That doesn't happen in seniority system. So there's good and bad to both. I think if you could merge the two in a fair way, there would be a safer fire service. And I don't mean safer by hitting it hard from the yard. I mean safer by we're still aggressive. We still do our jobs well, but there's safety in that guy that has experience, but also has a little bit of education to him,
Yeah, we get, I think, like 5 points on the exam, up to 5 points on the exam, 4 years of service.
Yeah, it should be 80%.
Yeah.
That should be
all it is. Yeah. It's New York State.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, we can't change it overnight, but what we can do is stuff like this, talk about it, inspire one another. I try to inspire the guys under me, below me, beside me, in front of me. Try to be, and I always haven't been, you go through your whole career. It's just like life. Sometimes you go through some hard stuff in life and you're kind of barely present. And then you kind of get a fire ignited under you, if you will. And you become a better person at the fire department as well. I think everyone deals with that. We're humans, but
yeah, I feel like I went through that over the past year. Ebbs and flows.
Yep.
Your attitude ebbs and flows, and you just got to work through it. And then remind yourself that this still is the best job in the world, and try to make it better every day you're there.
Best job I ever had.
Yep.
That was actually going to be my next question is, so right out the gate, once you got it straight to the line and everything, how long before you really felt that this was where you belonged? Or did you have a reverse feeling, the other side of that at some point within those first, let's say 5 years of going, I'm not so sure about this anymore?
Well, for me, it was love at first sight. I was in a real rough time when I got hired, and it was the job that saved me. It sounds cliche, but it's true. I got to break windows and kick in doors and not have really a care for my own health and safety. At that time, it was really volatile in my life, and it was my therapy. I could be the wild man and just do whatever I needed to do the job, and it was my source of sanity. So I loved it and never stopped loving it. I mean, I would never question it that maybe this isn't the job for me. I had friends in my class that caught a lot of bodies their first couple months and decided they wanted to go back to school, and that was cool. They decided it was a different path for them. Some guys went to the suburbs and made a lot more money right off the bat, doing less fire, but nevertheless the fire service. But yeah, never looked back. When I came on, the saying was, it takes you 5 years to even get your feet wet to figure out maybe what you're doing. And that was 5 years of 3-4 fires a night on average. And so if you take that and go, let's say a fire department that fights 1 to 2 fires a month, gosh, I can't imagine how long it takes to really feel like you understand fire, without all the technical jargon to understand fire. It would be for these young guys, is a tough thing. And all around the United States, not just here in Detroit. What we're dealing with now, you guys have been dealing with for a long time. The less fires, more EMS, the pressures of the job, training people to still be confident problem solvers and assets on a fire ground. That's a never-ending struggle. But I look at places in the suburbs and beyond and go, man, it just seems like an insurmountable task to teach these guys to be well-rounded firemen in the environment they're given. It's hard enough in the city, and I get 7. The city gets 7 a night to practice.
One thing we've said before is we're lucky our department upholds or champions training. And if guys want to go to a conference, they see anything, and if it fits the budget, they'll send them across the country for if there's training out there.
It's kind of wild, and I'm not going to be don't take this as the naysayer, but because we do have less, let's say, just like structure fires on their own. You get to that 3 to 5 year period, and so they all initially they just go right after one training after another. So that first like 1, 2, 3 years, they're trying to take every class available, and it gives them like who've witnessed this time and time again, that it's almost like a false sense of mastery of the skills. You really end up with you have no experience yet, but you have all these certifications, and then we see this quick burnout because there's nothing left to take, and then you have like this little level off playing field. So as like the instructors and the officers try to dial this thing in and out, you don't want to stunt someone and tell them, hey, no, don't do this. You don't want to pull them back, but you do have to slowly gate that so you have more of a naturalized curve of their experience in the fire service over 20 years rather than let them hit everything hard the first 3. It gives them a false sense of security. And then those are the guys that when they hit 5 years, they've leveled off, then they're like, oh, it's time for promotion. What did they just promote to?
Exactly. So that's the natural path, right? You have certs. So what's the next step? And I don't fault guys for that. You were hired into where you were hired in. I don't know how I got the job at 35 guys out of 14,000, but I did. But guys are hired where they're hired. If you're hired in some place that gets 1 a year, that's where you're at. I mean, that's no fault of somebody. Whereas it's a different path for me, and maybe an easier path. Maybe I had a much easier path. I really do think I had a much easier path because you are struggling. Like you're told, this class will get you certified, then this class, then this class. And certifications mean very little to fire behavior. When a fire is rocking, it doesn't look at you and say, oh, he's the guy. Mm-hmm. He knows, it doesn't matter to the fire. It doesn't matter. There are things that are super important. Fire behavior, building construction, right? Those are our 2 mains. But time gives you a much bigger perspective that can't really be, I don't know, talked about. It doesn't make sense. I liken it to a young guy who's looking to get into the military. And then he's talking to the master sergeant who's been through 3 or 4 conflicts. The kid can hear the stories, but he can't possibly understand. And he's not had the time to really appreciate that too. And there's a lot of guys with 5 years, like you said. What do you do? I'm not going to fire. I got to go to training. Now that's a whole nother game, a whole nother talking point. Is our responsibility, I feel like, with greater, what's the phrase? With greater opportunity comes great responsibility or great power.
Yeah.
I've been given something. If I don't take this and go, okay, we need to do better with training, and here's the things that I feel from my 20 years to make this better for these kids, these young guys coming up, young gals, that I'm doing them a disservice because they don't have the experience to fall back on where I did. I can make a lot of mistakes and get right back on that bicycle within a couple hours and right my wrongs. And they don't have that. The problem is fire doesn't care if you make the wrong mistakes at the wrong time, and there's enough of you making wrong mistakes, it's going to be really bad. And the other option is just hit it hard from the yard, and we can become fire monitors. We can change all of our t-shirts from fire department to fire monitors. And then no one gets hurt, right? So, but we don't want that. We want to make sure that we stay true to our calling, our oath. And that's a difficult thing in this world that we've been given in the fire service, to make sure these kids can think. In the day and age of, and this is my soapbox a little bit, in the day and age that leadership's being pushed heavily, and incident command it's law. Where in Detroit, we'd have riders back in the day. We used to have a little paparazzi group that people come from all over the nation to ride or even be near Detroit to watch them do their thing. And guys would time and time again say it was like a silent symphony. Everyone just opened their doors and everyone went to work, and there was no radio traffic. The chief just stood outside and made sure everyone came home alive, and everything else was based on the firemen making executive decisions. And the haters would call that freelancing, but it wasn't. It's freelancing if you're not in the right spot and if no one knows where you are. But it's not freelancing if I know exactly what I'm supposed to do and I go do it, regardless of asking permission. I rarely ever ask for permission. I don't think too many times I have. I would say, hey, I'm going to do this, not can I do this? And we are creating in the incident command world robots. Can I do this, please? Okay, you tell him, he'll tell him, he'll get it to the incident commander, he'll bring back and say it's okay. And so now I'm a good robot. Do this. Okay, I break the window. Why am I breaking the window? Am I breaking the right window at the right time? What's going on inside? All these things that can't learn 100% through a class. I feel the fire departments that are still burning have a deep responsibility to the rest of the fire service to have ride-along programs. Those used to be a big thing. Guys would be on smaller departments. They'd come ride with Chicago and New York and Detroit and Gary, Indiana, and they would go to these places and they get to hang out and do. So they get that burst of fire experience and be able to come and bring some of those nuggets back to their people. And that's still true probably in Rochester, where 30 years ago, there's probably a lot of FDNY guys who were teaching and helping form these other places and start their fire departments out in the suburbs that were growing and communities were being built. But that through litigation, it doesn't happen much anymore.
I was going to say the lawyers get involved and
fire is dangerous. Well, I got news for you. It is a dangerous job, and not everyone comes home.
Yeah.
It says it right on the inside of your jacket. You open up the jacket, it says right there, ultra hazardous.
Yep, it is a dangerous job. And guess what? You may catch cancer. Guess what? You may get injured. Guess what? You may die. But the oath is we're there to save lives and preserve property.
Yep.
And if that's not driven into you that, hey, someday you may have to put your life up as collateral and maybe pull someone else out, or even worse, you may not come out. That's what you signed up for. And if I could teach every one of my kids in a way that they know that, then when that fire, that man maker comes, because it's going to eventually, somewhere in the United States today, that man making fire is happening. And everyone on that scene has already made the decision or is going to have to make the decision. And that's not the time to make it on the fire ground. You make that decision way beyond, way in front of that fire. So when it's time to do that, you do it. And if you haven't had enough experience, you may make that decision and it may end up badly for you too. That's the other side of things.
So or not making a decision.
Or 9 times out of 10, if you haven't made that decision, guess what? The decision's already been made for you.
Yep.
You're not going to do it.
But that's where leadership's got to, and that doesn't necessarily mean just your crew boss, but your leadership does guide everybody else that does not have that experience yet, is the selection of the courses. Because there's the two types of courses. There's the one that gives you a certification in something, and then there's something that's more experience-based. So you want to try and encourage people to go out where there's evolution after evolution of pick a topic, you name it. For instance, there was just one, I want to say it was some point last weekend or last week, one of the local region has a flashover simulator. They come out all the time, and it's cool. It's a fun experience to see what it's like, but you're sitting inside of a can with just fire rolling over your head it's like, you're not, what did you actually teach there? And then you get one of these young guys coming back and they're like, oh, I was doing it. What did you learn? You learn what it's like to be stuck inside of there. The goal is to avoid that situation altogether.
Right.
So the rep should be, you know, something that's more experience based is making a push down a hallway where you get into a room or another building or inside the hallway itself where those conditions are changing rapidly so that you can now make a decision. Do I get out? Do I cool those gases? Do I ventilate? Whatever it is. And then do it again and do it 6 more times and make mistakes inside
And
of
be
a training evolution.
exhausted
That
and
way
be hot.
you're pressing into them the
Mhm.
experience rather than waiting for them to sit on the line to gain that experience. They may never come.
Right.
That's
Yeah, I
so
agree.
that's when I say, you know, change that plateau and that curve. That's the curve we're looking for.
Yeah, you guys familiar with FDTN out in
Oh,
Indianapolis?
been trying to get out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to get out this year too. I every year I say the same thing, and then life gets in the way. But those kind of experiences that are under live smoke, as much as can be live conditions, reps in a chaotic environment are what's important. I don't need a stable environment to tell me how to push fire because it's not going to work. I don't need a guy to show me how to advance line on smooth concrete because I've never advanced line on smooth concrete a day in my life. And going to a class and listen, I'll get flack for that. And I'm not saying those are bad because those are good building blocks. It just needs to be taken a step further.
Yeah, that's the crawl phase of training.
Right. And so if you tell them, well, now you know how to do it, until you've been in crawling through crap and under most dire circumstance situations, that's where you learn when you're exhausted and when you're a little bit puckered and you're not feeling real safe and all those things. That's where we learn, right? We learn through intensity, I think.
Yeah,
And I like the burn flashover chambers. We actually have one for the first time ever in the city. And they're actually good learning experiences even for the older guys because we grew up not wearing Nomexes. We just didn't. I mean, they weren't part of our culture. So I learned how to fight fire with no Nomex. And so I learned how to use my feeling on my side of my face, you know, to direct me and feel like how I could feel the changing atmosphere and nothing wrong with Nomexes. I think they're a great thing. But I use that as an example. It's like we need to teach how to use our senses to make decisions. And if we wrap a kid in bubble wrap and say everything's fine and safe, well, guess what? It's not fine and safe. What you're doing is not fine and safe. It may feel safe, but eventually it's not going to be safe. You're going to get an air emergency or a collapse or a rollover or, God forbid, a flashover. And then if you've never been in that situation, it's happening, you know, good luck. And
and I've kind of skirted around the issues on a couple of the podcasts we've done, and I said, and that's the problem with the alphabet soup agencies, is that they just pressurize this safety, which I'm not. Nobody wants to get hurt, especially in training. But how can you train to what we're actually doing if you put so many restrictions on the training?
Yes, come work for Detroit. I want you guys. Come on. You quit your jobs, come to Detroit. I love what you're saying. It's great because when you are trained from a young age to be afraid of everything associated with fire, it's going to kill you. Your PFAS is going to get you. Cancer is going to get you. Collapses are going to get you. Fire is going to get you. Everything's getting you. And then you go, well, now you want to be a good fireman. Well, you just taught them to be scared of everything associated with the job. They just and they have A, B, C, and D for certificates. And there's a gap there that needs to be brought narrower as far as real life training. And it should be mandated. But right now what's mandated is sensitivity training.
Yeah.
And ambulance rodeo certification and Your EMT better be up to date. Your fire rescue stuff better be done. By the way, we're taking some of your sick time. And this is all part of the fire service in general. It changes, but at the end of the day, what are we? I wear a t-shirt that says firefighter, fireman. And so if I cannot be confident as a fireman, someone's failing me or I'm failing myself.
Right, because at the end of the day, a fireman is the only one that is going to go in and put out a fire. Even though we see police officers run in and try to do their best.
Yeah.
But all the other...
It's amazing what these guys are doing. But
all the other secondary assignments that society has given us, EMS, the whatever other call, like the home health aid call I just talked about.
Yeah.
Somebody else can do those. We're the only ones that have the proper PPE, the tools, the fire trucks to go in and put a fire out and effect a rescue. We're the only ones. And it's sometimes that we lose sight of that.
We do. And I don't necessarily blame him. Look, a guy that's been in administration for most of his career now, or let's say he was a fireman for 10 years and now he's been admin for the last 5. Well, if he's not riding rigs, at least every once in a while, you lose touch, right? And then the fire service is just like anything else. We're not special. We're humans. So if I didn't do it, and I still like the fire service, maybe I'm going to teach. Problem is I can't really dig into anything that I don't know. I can puppet what the UL testing told me. What does that do? I mean, I always preface this, and it's kind of funny. Guys laugh all the time. They say, "Well, what do you use? Smoothbore or combo?" I said, "Well, whatever the city gives me."
Yeah.
I mean, it could be smoothbore tomorrow. I don't know what they're going to order. It's some dude that has never fought a fire ordering this stuff. What kind of gear do you wear? I honestly don't know what I wear. Check the tag. Yeah. I don't give a rip. Give me a bucket and a 10-speed. I'll put the fire out. That's what my job is. So gallons per minute, 1 3/4 versus 1 1/2. I don't give a crap about any of that. And that's why I'll never be the FDIC instructor of the year. I'll never be on the board of the NFPA because I don't care whether you have a 1010, an 880, or a Euro helmet. I'll preface that.
Hang on.
On a Euro helmet.
Hang on.
But I don't really care because a good fireman shows up at work and goes, "What are the tools I got to work with today? All right, let's go." And he's confident to go, "Okay, you changed me from a smoothbore to a fancy combo hen nozzle is the newest rage. Perfect, whatever. If you can't put out a fire with a red line booster line, maybe you got no business carrying that Cadillac 1 3/4 Mercedes textiles, whatever crap they came up with. Because at the end of the day, I need to be able to do it with whatever I've been given. Because that's our job. We're here to solve and mitigate the issue in front of us.
Yep.
And a certificate's not going to give you that. It's going to teach you this is the way to do it. Okay, well, we do it this way because that's what we did in that sterile cinder block environment that was tested. That's not real life.
No. And that's always my argument about, I mean, the UL NIST studies, they're good to give us some baseline knowledge on
baseline. Yep.
Sterile fire behavior. It's good stuff like that, but they're doing stuff with a stopwatch. They know the fire load. They know exactly when the fire is going to happen.
They got ticks. 7,000 ticks on this thing.
They have so many known variables where we show up at 2:30 in the morning. We don't know the variables. We don't know what's going on in there. Right. So it's good, but you got to take it for what it's worth and distill it down to exactly what we're looking at instead of taking it as gospel.
Disclaimer on every class is taught that you should have to sign saying, "I understand this, but I still don't know shit."
Yeah.
Like it's to step back. You know this now. Now try to apply that in real life. What happens when you got carpet on fire? What about all the trash that's in the way? What about the void spaces in the old 100-year-old tinderbox of a house you're going into? You know what? My tactics in Detroit are not going to be the same as yours. There's guys that show up with one guy on a rig, and he's waiting a while before the next guy comes. I can't do the same thing they're doing with Detroit tactics. I got 22 guys. I got hydrants. Some places don't have hydrants, you know, so that changes things on the wait for water. You know, there's so many variables out there. How dare I go, well, this is the way to fight fire? We have a Detroit bundle. It's a very specific load to Detroit. Maybe it doesn't work out in Rochester. That's fine. Minuteman load might work better. Perfect. You got garden hoses from Home Depot. All right, let's go.
Yeah, that's what we're using today.
Yeah, let's slow down a little bit. Maybe you guys wear cutoff shorts for bunker gear. Guess what? We got to change what we're doing here. I can't go as deep in my Bermuda shorts as I do. You know, it sounds silly, but that's the truth, right? What I'm given is what I'm given, and I need to be really good at that. When we change our SCBAs, just a simple mask change to a newer version, there's a learning curve. I've been doing this way for so long, and now there's an extra little step. I need to become good at that. We change from 1.5 inches to 1 3/4. I got to get really good at being familiar with 1 3/4 and what it can do and what it can't do. Change rigs. You know, we go from Pierce's to Rosenbauer. Well, that's a big learning curve. Without, you know, dogging on a manufacturer, but you know, things change. We have to be ready for those changes. You know, Nomex has changed the rot. Doesn't mean that's the solution. It's just a tool to be used. We got chainsaws. Great. I don't give my kid a chainsaw and say, cut down that tree. He's got to be really good with everything associated with that chainsaw and under duress, under chaos. And that makes a good fireman. To me, a good fireman is just always thinking.
Yeah. Can I just get a question? Go back to, you've said it, I think 2 or 3 times now, the silent symphony on the fire ground and the firemen knowing their spots, and it's not freelancing. How much do you, if at all, is that derived from strong SOPs, SOGs that Detroit has in your department? Or is it just something you've done it for so many years, everybody knows their spot, you don't even need SOPs, SOGs, and you just go to work?
That's a really good question. That's a deep question. Our SOPs until a couple of years ago were printed on black and white paper from 1984. You know, they weren't kept up. A fire SOP on a fire ground would look like everyone shows up, put the fire out. You know, it was like very simple. I mean, that's a little overkill, but it was very simple. There wasn't a lot of like steps besides establishing water supply, you know, things like that. Our ladder trucks, their job was always roof ventilation. Utilities were secondary. Search and rescue was foremost. Our engines, which a typical box in Detroit, if I backtrack a minute, is 3 engines, 1 ladder truck, 1 heavy rescue squad, and 2 chiefs. Now, it didn't used to be that way. They've changed over the years, but that's typical. We're an engine-driven fire department. I've seen other places are very heavy ladder-driven, you know, where everyone makes the rank and they go to ladders and they do all the technical. We're a very like grunt, gritty-based engine company thing. We get 4-man ride, which is, we fought a long time for that. So we always have 4 men on a ride. So if an engine comes, it's coming with 4 people. It's coming with the driver, it's coming with the boss, and 2 deckies. We call them deckies, you know, back end deck.
Yep.
You know, throw back to the traditions. And I would say now, if I were to qualify it in nerd terms, as I call it, we are not incident command driven. We're SOG driven. With the caveat that our SOGs really don't tell us exactly what to do. We know what we're supposed to do. And so we do what we're supposed to do. So I guess it would be closer to SOG driven fireground. than incident command driven.
So do you have like internal, like how some companies, for instance, like our department, we have a fireground SOG that lays out basic fireground structure, what our specific tasks are supposed to be, and first arriving engine, second arriving engine, first arriving truck, second arriving truck. Within those SOGs, it seems like depending on the boss and or the company, we kind of manipulated those SOGs to how that boss operates. So do you kind of have like some internal SOGs based on company to company?
Yeah, I mean, loosely based, the first engine stretching, unless there's a rescue, and then they're establishing their line and then going in. But there's a lot of leeway to the scenario. The second engine usually is backing up the first engine. We're establishing a second line. Third engine's usually considered manpower or RIT. The tactical, we call them squads, but they're the heavy rescue squads. We got 6 of them in the city. They are truly manpower. They're there to fill in the gaps. The only guys that truly have a very tight SOG is the first arriving engine. They're stretching. They're putting fire out.
Which makes sense. I think that gives...
ventilation is a ladder truck has a very specific rule as well. The rest of the circus that shows up is there just to play and fill in the gaps. And now recently we've established RIT. We're always about 20 years behind everyone else. So now we have RIT teams, and those RIT teams are proactive by nature. They're there to soften the structure, open security bars and doors, and kind of know what's going on the fireground. So if there's something that, like, God forbid, a Mayday, they kind of know where people are at and what they're doing and what they need to do. They put up ladders if there needs to be ladders. They kind of do what everyone does, just fill in the gaps, because everyone is there for one person, and that's the guy in the pipe.
Yep.
And if everyone's doing their job, the pipe man, what we call him in the city, his job is a lot easier. Yeah, that's Silent Symphony. It's like you get off, you kind of just know what you're supposed to do. And if you don't, you stick with your boss. We do have crew integrity. A lot of times I'll say, okay, guys, unless this is a simple fire that requires 2 lines, we're all staying on the same line, right? Whereas if we're stretching, like let's say tomorrow I get a box and 54s is stretching, my radio communication is going to be engine 54 on the scene stretching on a dwelling. You probably aren't going to hear anything from me. You're not going to hear a 360 size up, unless something is off, that needs to be set over the radio. I'm stretching. Then it goes quiet because I'm stretching. I don't have anything else to say. I do a quick 270, which I see 3 sides of the structure. That would change if I was in an area with a lot of walkout basements, right? I mean, that would change everything. But we don't have a lot of those, so we do what we know to do. And I usually have my kid pull the bundle, flake out. While he's flaking out, he's looking at the same 3 sides I did. I disappear. Don't tell NFPA 2 in, 2 out rule. I disappear into the dwelling to find the fire, come back, and say, okay, kid, we're going to go back halfway. Stairs are going to be on the right. We're going to go upstairs, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. And everyone else kind of joins in.
That's an awesome engine. What an engine boss should do is always take that peek and try to find that fire, try to get that layout. And
because what happens when you go through the front door?
Something that's lost.
Everything changes, right? We just introduced new flow path. The fire is growing at a rapid rate. If I can get a quick glimpse in there, even if it's just inside the front door, then I already have a map in my internal mind, then I can make that. But if you just go blind and open that pipe up at the front door because you're scared to death of smoke, then you're creating more issues, right? When we upset the thermal balance, lights go out, the flame's no longer there. It's hot everywhere. No one knows where this fire is. It's now you got to manage the chaos where it's simple, just peek in when the fire is still naturally doing what it does. I can go find it. I keep it simple. We go in, not a lot of yelling. All right, kid. First thing I always say is it's hot. I can't see anything. And everyone laughs. Yeah, it's hot. We're all hot in here. So let's go get this thing. Let's push up a little, 10 more feet. It's starting to burn. I get it, but we have to make the room to get that fire. Because if we don't, we're going to sit in this room. It's going to get real hot. So I try to keep things as simple as they can be within what the rules of I've been given. And in Detroit, we're given a lot of leeway, which I think is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think it's paying your officers to make decisions and lead.
Yeah.
Where does search fit in with that? Where does that fall inside your guidelines?
So
who's searching and when?
I'll qualify my statement in that we have 22 guys on a box. So if I have an 1,800 square foot house, very rarely are you going to see this. All right, let's get everyone in to search this thing. There's so many guys piling through that front door. Every room gets searched fairly quickly. So there's not a lot of tactical driven, like, hey, let's search in front of the line or this or that. It's scenario based. VEIS, right? That's one of the big pushes out there. And I understand why it's a big push. If you got 3 guys showing up, there's no way you're going to fight that fire with the 2 in, 2 out. You're going to have 1 or 2 guys, and we still have life safety, which is foremost, right? So if there's a back bedroom on the back of that house that I can get into and I can effect rescue, I'm going to do it. You don't see VES a whole lot in the city because it's like the Detroit wrecking crew comes through and it's out. So very few of our fires last more than an hour from start to finish. And a small bungalow, story and a half, that's a 45-minute fire from start to finish. That's picking up line and everything. And I think there is a beauty in that because we all know how fast fire grows. So if I'm there longer and it takes longer to get stuff done, it becomes more complicated every 30 seconds. Yeah. If I can get in there and put that out, it's better for the victim. It's better for me. It's better for the surrounding neighbors. It solves all the problems that are now becoming a problem because we're taking too long to actually do our job. I see in the suburbs, like, I kind of laugh when sometimes I see it. It's like everyone gets off and they huddle. Well, what's happening during that huddle? Or the safety vest has to go on the incident commander. Well, what's he? And he's like, listen, he's only doing what he's supposed to be doing. That administration or that fire department tells him you have to do this. So he has to abide by the rules he's been given. But every second we're not being proactive, we're losing. And if you have new construction, man, sometimes I don't know how you guys do it with new construction. Like, I got old houses, legacy houses, true dimensional lumber. These things could burn 2 or 3 times and we're still going to go in because they hold up.
We're probably at about a 50-50 split where we are right now.
Yeah.
In our town.
And you know how easy it is or how confident you can be on a legacy construction house versus something that's sawdust and glue.
Yeah.
They just go. And when they go, it's like you either get it or you're out because it's going, And so those are some of the things that other people have to contend with that we don't as much. So we can kind of look like rock stars and go into these things. And the reality is our construction affords us that freedom. Our manpower affords us that freedom. Our water supply is only 50 feet away. Those are things that we have that are not always the case in all of the fire service in America,
Yeah. Awesome points. So let's jump to your fourth man fire.
Yeah.
So you said your wife kind of pushed it on you to do it?
Yeah, so my wife is a suburbanite girl. She's never left her suburb much in her life growing up. She didn't really know anything about the city. Um, and she married a fireman. I was already a fireman when we got married. And so she had a lot of getting used to that 24-hour shift, sleeping at a brand new newlywed couple, sleeping by yourself 2 to 3 nights a week, not seeing me for 24 hours before Zoom, before all the technology caught up. And she really had a hard time, rightfully so. And and I'm one of those people, I talk about my days. Doesn't matter what it is. I don't pulling punches. So she knows about all the death, destruction, and despair. She's seen me have 2 shoulders rebuilt, my back broken, coming home with burns on my face. She's seen all that. She's seen my good friends die. These were hard things for her. She's been to the funerals, and it would keep her up at night. And we're a faith family, God first, Fire is a third for us. It's faith, family, and fire. And I know that's very cliche, but it's very true in our house. And one night she was reading the good book, and there's this story in the book of Daniel, which is just one of the books in the Bible, a story about 3 Hebrew kids in the Middle East. And Hebrews were traditionally slaves at the time, and they were God-fearing young men. And they were living in an area that the king, in most times like that, the king was to be worshipped as a god, right? And the king said, hey, listen, everyone worships me. These kids were like, basically, the long and short of it, these kids were like, no, I was raised differently. I stand up for what I believe. He's like, okay, we're going to put you in the furnace, which was, their main industrial center. And so they put these 3 guys in the furnace, and one of the soldiers was like, hey, did we put 3 in there? Because I see 4 people in this fire, and one looks like an angel. And the story goes that these 3 young men came out not even smelling like smoke. Like the miraculous, like the Lord protected them because they were doing the right thing. And so that was the story of the 4 men in the fire. And so when I started my Instagram, now my business, it's Fourth Man Fire. It's been shortened now to Fourth Man, like everything else. But
Right.
that's where it came from, because she found peace in that passage of scripture that was like, he was called to do this. If he's called to do it, there's some protections there that ought to be there that I can stand on. And I firmly believe that too. There's been times where we make these decisions to go in these buildings. And I remember a very specific time, apartment building on Jason Street, right on the west side. And we show up, and it's a 3-story occupied apartment building. There was some domestic violence that went on earlier in the night. And so the thugs, as they were, decided the solution was just to kill everyone inside. Just put gasoline throughout the hallways, light the place up. It's 4 a.m, so everyone's home. We show up. This place is ripping. Flames shooting out the first and second, and the second and third floor. And it's like Chutes and Ladders. People are just jumping. It's just like, hold the ladder and just move back and forth like a video game. Hopefully you can catch somebody and bring them down the ladder. It was that chaotic. And eventually there was no more jumpers, but the windows started really getting black orange, and it was starting to fill the whole place. And we had a decision to make, and it wasn't what decision to make then. We had already made the decision. We got to go in and do a rescue, a search. And this place was not tenable in many areas, right? To use the fancy words. But there was many places that people could still be. And so I remember that was one of the first times I remember going, the odds are not good that we come out whole out of this. And we may not come out. And that was one of the first times where I really felt like, oh, that's the end all for this job. If it comes to it, my safety is not as important as their safety, because my job, my calling is to preserve life, not my life, but someone else's, right? And so that changed my trajectory. I came out of that, had a shoulder surgery, blew out one of my shoulders, and Miraculously, everyone survived. I think we pulled like 9 to 20 out. It's still fuzzy because people were just pulling so many people out. The roof collapsed. The whole place collapsed like 2 minutes after we left. And it was an eye opener for me. But yeah, the fourth man thing is something that rings true to me. If I'm called to do something, whatever it is, I have to have some confidence that my creator is making a way for me, is guiding my paths. In a nutshell, that's what it is.
I like it. I like the message.
Yeah.
I just finished the Old Testament about a month ago.
Nice.
Kind of I use it as like my go between it, or my in between. When I'm in between books, I'll just pick it up and start reading. And
there's wisdom in it.
So, yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
I look at it. It's this handbook for life. If you don't read the manual, how are you going to know in certain situations? Because fighting's a very small part of my life, right? I love it. It's my calling, but I got so much more going on than just that.
Yeah.
And life it's a roller coaster, right? We could talk about PTSD. We could talk about mental health. We could talk about all these things, because in reality, this is a small portion, 45 minutes or an hour out of my day. The rest of my day is just living life in general. So I think you have to have a spiritual grounding if you want to survive this life intact.
Yeah, I agree. And you got to have something outside the fire service as well.
Absolutely, man. The fire service will eat you alive if you have nothing else. Bunch of type A personalities, boys club. My God, the trouble you could get in is it's crazy. And addictions. What we do is by nature a very dark thing. I mean, if we didn't have problems in society, we wouldn't have firemen.
Yeah.
And so we're diving into other people's problems constantly. And I already have my own. And we're all a container. Right? I don't know how deep your container is. Mine's different than yours. And you may not know. But eventually it fills up. And I got to have a way of figuring things out and working through things. And for me, and I believe it should be for most people, is there's a higher power, a creator that gives me direction.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. You got that metaphor of, that vessel that everybody is, and it gets filled up. You have to have a healthy way of draining that. Because once it spills over, you go down a path that
it's tough to. It's kind of like losing your cool in a fire. Once you lose your cool, it's really hard to bring it back.
Yeah.
Getting an entanglement maze, we've all been in them. You do it 5 or 6 times, you get tangled the right way, and you start feeling your mind start to go. It's really hard to reel that back in once it's gone. I think it's the same way with life, Think about how many runs you go on now that are just anxiety attacks. That's all they are.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. It's like, oh my God, everyone's anxious.
It's just my brother works. It's like his side gig. It's a full-time side gig because he owns an ice cream shop. He works at an ambulance, and we were just talking about how many people are on hardcore anxiety medicines right now. And 25 years ago, these people would be in a mental institution, right, wrong, or indifferent, but they were giving these hardcore prescribed drugs under supervision. Now they're just giving these hardcore drugs to people and say, here you go, take them. And they might be taking them correctly. They might be abusing them.
Yep.
Or they might not be taking them at all. And it's
and they're not dealing with life. They're just doing this.
It's popping them.
It's alcohol 101, alcoholics 101, right? It's like, just give them a way to get through life without thinking. It's zombie land out here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And unfortunately, we are the mental health catch-all. Us police in the hospitals. I was talking to a nurse yesterday because I pick up EMS shifts, not because I love them, because we all know where I stand if I had to pick firemen or EMS. But I pick them because I got so many young guys that have to ride these rigs. I feel like if I'm a good company officer, I need to understand where they're coming from. I need to be on some of this stuff. So I do pick up shifts here and there. I get paid overtime too. It's not like it's all because I care so much, but I do feel like I have a perspective of what they have to deal with and still become good firemen. And it is in the emergency rooms, it's like, what would you guys do if there was mental institutions? This place would be crickets. There would be no patients here.
Yeah.
Because for every legit emergency, there's like 25 that are just need to be handled in a different avenue, but they're not. So the fire, police, and EMS and the hospital have to catch it.
Yeah.
So you got so the fourth man, the concept behind there. Does this have any parallel drawn to? You said you just recently got to 4-man engine companies. Did this have parallel prior to when you guys were at like 3 or 2?
I think it's like everything else. It was just like, oh, we also have a 4-man ride. We've had 4-man rides since I was on the job. Like that was something that was won a long time ago. But there's something that could be said about that, right? Having a full staffed crew and crew integrity, that says a lot. I mean, having that extra guy on that rig is everything. Where all these it seems like everywhere I go, it's like, how many guys? Well, we have 2. We have 4 rigs in the fire station, but we have 2 guys staffing it. Like, how can you fight fire that way?
Believe me, this is an argument I've been going down with one of the local fire departments where I live.
I believe it.
And until you can see it, you can't just conceptualize it, and understand those difficulties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just actually got to ourselves. So now that we're 4 companies, we just got back relatively recent in the last few years to 4-man engines or 4-man rigs altogether. But we started with 1 engine, 1 ladder, and worked our way up to 4 people per. And then as we divided and conquered, and added more rigs, we thinned back out to 3. And then it was back to, slowly worked its way to 4-man crews. And it has made a world of a difference operationally.
Yeah.
And the big thing is for us, because we are not working with a ton of legacy houses, we're working with all those new style construction. The moment somebody's calling 911, we're already behind the ball.
Way behind. Right.
So when we get there, we need as much manpower as possible. And the best feeling in the world is being able to do our jobs where somebody can go back into that house and, we get to drive back to the station. If we can hold it to a room and content or one side of the structure, that's awesome. If we lose this thing completely, then I guess we have to look back. Was it worth 4 people? Maybe we need more.
Right.
But
what the hardest part about the fire service is, the administrators look at it from the public perception. Well, what happens when Podunk Fire Department goes to the fire and loses it and goes to the basement? Afterwards, what do the neighbors all say? Good job.
Good job. Yeah. Concrete don't burn, though.
There's no scale of grading. It's always a good job. It's like, no, that wasn't a good job. You guys need more funding. You need more butts and seats. It wasn't a good job.
I just saw a post on this going through the Instagram, and it was like it was a new account I just followed. I'd have to look at it, but it hit home. It was like the fire service does a massive investigation on a line of duty death to change SOPs, SOGs, and tactics and all this other stuff. Where's the investigation when we have a casualty? Like there's a police investigation, but we don't look at ourselves at, oh, what did we do wrong? There's no big investigation on that.
Right. And even more so, the administrators should feel responsible.
Correct. Yeah.
You're making these decisions that you and I have no control over. You don't control how many people are on your rig when you get on. They do. But there's no accountability there. There's only accountability when really, really bad things happen. And usually not even that much accountability. It's just a fancy report.
Yeah.
And that's only from one of the arms of public service. What if it happens to be, we discussed that, the overlap in services. What if one of those overlaps accidentally causes more destruction than necessary, than the fire originated with?
Yeah.
Because we got people trying to do the right thing, kicking in doors, getting people out, but because you didn't show up in the red truck with the training.
Yeah. You opened up every window and now that place is an inferno. Thank you.
where is that accountability?
Yeah.
And that's not on the firemen's, the individual firefighters' shoulders to weigh that stuff out. We're gonna bitch about it because we're the ground user of this thing.
Right.
But that's when you're looking from an administration level, you got to walk across your street to city hall or the town hall or whatever it is, and start talking with the other heads of staff over there and go, hey, maybe it's a stay in your lane, a hard conversation that, or it's, hey, what can we do better? What if we can help train your people so that when they first get there, what to expect while we're arriving, whatever way that conversation's got to go, but that needs to start happening. So in this big city, probably not going to be happening as much, but we see it out in the counties all the time. Wrong people kicking in doors, thinking with a good intent of trying to help.
Yeah.
It's not their fault.
No.
So Dave, we're closing. I was going to say we're closing on 2 hours. I want to get through these rapid fire questions. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
It's been 2 hours.
I know. It flies. It
goes by quick.
You got to let the edit to do.
And you know what, though? I think this is going to be, we're going to have you back on because this was an awesome discussion.
I think I'm walking away with more questions.
Yeah,
I think a whole sheet of questions going on this side here.
Listen, if I don't know the answer, I'll make one up, okay?
That works.
But yeah, I mean, I was in my house like, we got to have Dave back on sooner than later. There's a lot more stuff that we didn't even get to. Just the conversation was awesome. But I do want to get to, Matt gave us three questions. I'm going to fire them off real rapid. You can just answer them as fast as you can. I think I already know the answer to the last one, but I'd like to know what maybe a passage from that book would be. So best advice, worst advice, and book or movie quote that stayed with you.
Best advice, shut up.
Love it.
Worst advice, hear from that window on the outside. And then passage
or quote that stayed with you.
Oh boy, I don't even know what it's from. You go, we go.
Oh, it's from Backdraft.
There you go.
I thought I was gonna put money that you're gonna put a good Bible quote on us.
Oh, and I already gave you that one. That was the best
I know you. Yeah, that is a great one. That is a good one. See, now I'm gonna have to go back to Daniel and look that up.
Yeah, it's a good read,
Yeah.
So now with Fourth Man, my goal is to eventually become a 501c3, and the premise of Fourth Man is to be that fourth man, to be the guy that helps through the fire service, through scholarships, through line of duty, whatever it is, to come alongside the brotherhood and be that fourth man, and to encourage other people to be the same thing, to be the fourth man in the fire.
That's an awesome message.
Whether it's being an aggressive mindset that's smart and an asset on the fire department, which is I teach that's where I teach mostly, is how to give them inspiring confidence to make decisions and be good firemen. Or just on the very administrative side of taking care of people that are less fortunate in the fire service.
I like it. It's awesome. I wish there was more people like that in our fire service and just in the first responder community. We need more people like you, more people doing what you do and helping people out.
You're doing it.
We're trying. We're this is just fun for us.
Yeah.
That's what it is for me too. I'm just trying to be me. I always tell my young kid, I want you to know I'm going to make mistakes at every fire. And then because I want to clear the air. Everyone's going to make mistakes. I am not perfect. Yep. We're going to do this together. And I want to see you become a good person.
Yep.
That's really it. At the end of the day, I want to go and meet my maker, and I want him to say, well done. You were faithful. I'm good. In this world, I just want to be known as a good fireman. And a good dad, that kind of stuff. But
awesome stuff, man. Okay, so you have the fourth man Instagram page is just Fourth Man Fire.
Yep.
At Fourth Man Fire.
At Fourth Man Fire.
You also have a website, fourthmanfire.com.
Yeah, under construction.
Under construction. What is it that you're still waiting for that one? You got
I'm
any
an
merch
old
up there?
dog, man. It's hard. The technology is tough. And I feel like everyone needs a website, so I started one.
Perfect.
I want to do more speaking. I like training, but we've already talked about that. There's so many things that to talk training is, I don't feel that that's my place. There's people that do that. And I do it at our academy. I teach live fire. There's a part of it that's important, but I want to inspire. I want to be out there talking to chiefs on down to 1-year guys and showing them this is it, man. This is you. Everyone can do this. Not everyone, but if you're here and you want to do this, you can. And that we're just regular people that struggle through life. We took the oath.
Yep.
So you mentioned conferences, symposiums. You got one coming up, yes? The Into the Job Symposium.
I'm going to be at the Into the Job Symposium in Wichita in June. Locally, I do some stuff. I'm trying to get into some more of that. That's a different world too. You know, there's a lot of people that are, I call them the corporate firemen. They're in with the big money, the big names. Mm-hmm. It's great. I don't take nothing from them, but I don't know if I fit in that box. And I'm just going to keep doing what I do. And hopefully there's guys that go, I remember that guy. He was nice.
Yeah.
He was nice and he shook my hand and told me it was going to be all right.
Yeah, sometimes that stuff's handy because you don't have to necessarily fit into that world, but you can definitely use it as a conduit to reach out to more people that might not have the same access through the other conventional platforms.
Right.
So that's also pretty cool. Anything else you want to plug? Nothing for recruitment? You got tests coming up? What do we got?
Detroit's always hiring.
Detroit's
we've
always
hired a lot of people lately. But I mean, my big thing is wherever you're at, right? You got a hometown you work in. That's where you need to be. I mean, sure, there's big city, but we're a community fabric. We're the very fabric of the community, right? Without us, that community just doesn't thrive. So to me, I always encourage guys that want to be firemen, start where you're at.
Yeah.
And then go from there. The doors will open. You know?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good stuff. We'll have to hammer out our schedules again and get you back on because, like Matt said, the conversation was good.
I'll have
some tangent
next time.
That's all right. Maybe I'll get a new mic that didn't break on me. We got 2 spare ones at the firehouse. Okay. This thing's old. This was a COVID purchase from when my kids are doing the computer learning.
Well, it was great. Thank you for so much for having me on. I just I'm honored. I really am.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
And everything that you're doing. Keep chugging along. That's awesome.
I've got 12 years to go.
12 years. That's it. Hey, so do I.
And then I'll be old. What's his name? What was that guy's name? I don't know.
I don't know. He was on a podcast too, Knuckleheads.
Yep.
Right. All went downhill after that. Lou, what do you got? Anything?
Nothing. If anybody hasn't seen the talk about conferences, I don't even know how it happened and just got approached when I was sitting in as a student. I'm going to be presenting at training days down in Alexandria.
That's awesome.
Chief Master came up to, I was just sitting in the crowd. We, have some correspondence through text messages. He's got some connections up here. Andy's Frederick's daughter teaches in the area. Okay. So we kind of had that little connection and just started shooting the breeze. And he came up to me. He's like, think this room's too big for you? I'm like, no, this room's perfect for this conference. He goes, no, for you to present. I'm like, I think I could do it. Right. So training days is coming up in September. Got that. That's about it for me.
Yeah,
Instagram's going good.
Quick. Registration window opens, I think it's like the 14th or 15th of May, and you got to jump on it. It's 11 a.m. I know that much because it fills up quick too.
Yeah.
We have the Instagram, Fire from 2 Windows. How's that going?
Good.
Good.
Some stuff up there. Don't got the following that Dave's got, but we're working there.
No, but that's actually how we connected up. So that
Yeah.
was awesome.
Yeah.
We do have the Gmail account. That's the fire from two windows at gmail.com. So if you want to reach out to us, whether that's to get on this thing, bitch, complain, make comments, we'll take it all. We take everything that is community driven and we try to get that out to everybody else. You got something that maybe your department won't allow you to come on or speak so candidly, feel free to reach out to us. We have no problem speaking on your behalf, and we'll keep it all copacetic with all the rules and everything. Any questions that we don't have the answers to, we can source them. Maybe we'll be calling Dave or some of our other guests to find that information for you. We would like to be the conduit for resources as well. Anything else, guys?
That's it. Stay safe
All right,
out there.
that's it. Stay safe.
Thank you, sir. You too.